And welcome to a special edition of the Bill Kelly Podcast. This is our live stream, which we usually do on Thursdays at 6 o'clock, but we had some other things going on there. We had to delay it for an hour, and we apologize for those of you that are now getting comfortable into that 6 o'clock thing on Thursday. It's going to happen again. It's just that today we put it off for 24 hours. So here we are, Friday. It's snowing here in Ontario, where we are doing our podcast from. Winter is not over here, and apparently it's not over in a whole lot of parts of the country. But we're getting some pretty messy weather all right across North America these days too, and that's not even counting the dark black skies that are hanging over Washington and the Trump administration, which we can talk about, I guess, a little bit later on. Judging from the feedback that we have received over the last little while from some of the stuff that we have talked about on the podcasts, it's as I say, we always do this. We just kind of open the forum up for you guys. And our friends like Chris Moore, who just logged on. Hello, Chris. Good to have you with us. And so many other folks that we really look forward to. John Flynn, good afternoon. John, right back at you. Carmen is here. Carmen, good to have you with us here. Philip Dean says, cool, my first live. Well, it's good to have you on board with us, Philip. Thanks so much. Marilyn says, hello, all from Toronto. And Adam, hi all. So good to have you with us, and the rest of you jump in here. We want to see as much as we can, and you guys, as always, get to direct as what we're going to do in the podcast. Okay, this is your hour. We open this up. You want to talk about what's going on with Iran, with Donald Trump, what's happening with some of the numbers here. Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre is down in the States now, we're told, or will be shortly. To well, I don't want to get into the Poilievre thing too deeply. You know, he did his European fun adventure, his excellent adventure a couple of days ago, and Canada Nurse says, "Hey, Bill, stay warm." It's winter here again, and that's kind of neat. You know, this is Canada, so we expected that. I was telling Madeline, our producer, a little while ago, a couple of days ago, I was basically doing yard work. I mean, that's how mild it was here in our area of Ontario. And I thought, shit, should I put the snowblower away? It'll leave on for another couple of days. And we've got probably 15, 20 centimeters of stuff coming down right now, but that's what happens. Colin Thompson says, hey, greetings from Canada in New York. PM Carney looked to be dressed casual in comparison to PM Norway and the German Chancellor. Yeah, I watched that press conference earlier today. It all had to do with NORAD and with G7 and with a bunch of these people meeting to talk about what we can do here to do with essentially our commitment to the North. And I think it was so important that they met there. And the Prime Minister actually viewed some of the military exercises that were going on there. But they talked about solidarity, about protecting the North and Canada's commitment. And that's a substantial commitment. $35 billion that they're going to be spending up there for some of those Canada commitments to the defense, and well received by Germany and Norway and other countries as well. Renee says, I am still embarrassed over PP's visit to Germany. Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. Apparently he's going down to Detroit to talk to automakers, and then he's going to Washington. I don't know if his purpose there is to, well, he says it's to talk about trade. He has no authority to do any of that stuff. Okay, he's a member of parliament. Yeah, he's the opposition leader, but he has no authority to make commitments or anything else. So it's really a photo op for him, really. Canada File says P.D. Poilievre is once again cosplaying as pretend PM. Yeah, he mentioned that if you saw any of the comments, I think it was in Germany that he made reference to my conservative government. He doesn't have a conservative government, and he's not going to have one anytime soon, if at all. Sandra says, why is PP in Windsor in Michigan speaking about Kuzma? Well, I could go down there. Maybe I'll do that. That's a good point, Sandra. I think I'll go down there and I'll have a meeting with U.S. representatives and I'll talk about trade. No, I know I don't have any authority to make any deals and I can't offer them anything, nor can I accept anything they say, but neither can Pierre, yet he's down there. So I find it fascinating that here's a guy who spent the last year or so criticizing Carney for going all over the place for photo ops. Which is exactly what he's doing right now. Card says, I thought PP was going to Texas after Detroit, where the plans change. Oh, maybe it is Texas. But does it really matter? Is anything substantive going to come of it? No. Spoiler alert, no, it's not. Mind you, when Mark Carney goes on a trip, as he just recently did, to China and to India and to Australia, he comes back with trade deals and commitments, which is what the Prime Minister is supposed to be doing. So, this is exactly what we asked of this Prime Minister, and that's what he's doing. Hey, Linda, good to have you with us. Says the political piece was a real takedown of Pierre. The GOP sources nailed him. Yeah, I mean, aside from Giovanni and a bunch of his other buddies down there, I mean, I don't think anybody takes this guy seriously, even on that side of the border. But he's going to go down there and pretend that he's a leader and pretend that he has muscle when it comes to things like negotiations. He doesn't. John Flint says we all had a good laugh when PP said our biggest natural resource was the cold. Ha ha ha. Well, that kind of tells you just how in tune he is with what's going on these days, doesn't it? When he makes comments like that. Canada Nurse says Poilievre is pathetic. He can't stand not being the PM, so he goes around pretending. Canadians don't want him. The numbers indicate that. We did a podcast a couple of days ago, if you may recall, and we talked about three different polling results that came out all at once that essentially reinforced what you're saying here, is that about 70% of the people in this country are totally on side with Carney and think he's doing exactly what we want him to do, and they like him. That's as far as the Carney government is concerned. Carney's personal appeal is even higher than that. And Poilievre, I guess, just can't seem to understand or certainly can't accept that. Susie says, did I miss Thursday Live? No, it's now on Friday. Just this week, Sue. We had to bump it back 24 hours, but we're going to try to be back at you next Thursday, as per usual, with our live cast and our live stream then. But glad you were able to find us today and jump into the conversations. Philip Dean says, PP said Canadian LNG is cheap because we have lots of cold here, and our east coast is only 12 days away from Germany. Yeah, okay. And again, here's Poilievre trying to pretend that he knows something about policy and can make commitments to this. And you know what I find fascinating about this? An awful lot of what he's talking about here, like including even LNG, is all stuff that Prime Minister Carney's already discussed with world leaders. When he goes to Germany, he talks to the Chancellor. When he goes to the UK, he talks to the Prime Minister. When he goes to Australia, he talks to the Prime Minister. When he goes to India, he talks to the Prime Minister. When Poilievre goes there, he talks to, I guess, some people that were elected to public office, but they're not in government. They're on the opposition side, which I guess is where he feels comfortable. Chantel says these three elections can't come soon enough. Oh, you're talking about the by-election, Chantel. Yeah, that's a good story, isn't it? They've been called for next month, about the middle of April. They're going to be three by-elections, two in the Toronto area, Bill Blair's former seat and Chrystia Freeland's former seat, which we are told are safe Liberal seats. And they still have to do the voting and count the voting. The other is that very controversial riding in Quebec that the Liberals won by one vote in the last election, and that was nullified because there was some concerns about whose vote was counted and mail-in ballots, etc., with the bloc. But I don't know. I don't know how that one's going to go. Colin says, will you and Markham do an in-depth show about oil prices in Canada and the politics? Yeah, Markham is a great guest. Markham Hyssop's been a guest on the podcast many times. Always enjoy our conversations. And we have talked about that in the past. But to your point, Colin, it's a very fluid situation, if you'll excuse the pun there, when we're talking about oil. And it changes almost daily, especially with what's going on in Iran these days. And yeah, we are actually, Madeline, our producer, and I were talking about hooking up with Markham again. We're going to do that in the next couple of days, and we'll let you know, give you some advance notice on that. George says, here's a thought, Bill. New rule for Parliament to stop floor crossings. If a member of Parliament loses his or her seat, they are not allowed to run again till the next election. Bye-bye, PP. The Prime Minister Carney made a reference to that in question period the other day when Poilievre, I guess, was supposedly trying to get under the Prime Minister's skin, and says, since you flip-flop all the time or some ridiculous thing like that, will you now accept my policy? And the Prime Minister answered in question period, and I'll paraphrase it. He says, there's a lot of stuff that you propose, Mr. Poilievre, that I don't want to do, including this idea of flip-flopping across the country to try to find a riding to get elected in after you lose your seat. Which drew a lot of applause from the government side of the House, derision from the other side. Welcome to question period. Poilievre is one who, speaks with forked tongue, as they used to say in the old movies. Chris Moore says, the Bill Kelly podcast, should the federal and provincial governments get ready for the economic whiplash that is coming thanks to the Iran-U.S. debacle? It's already here, Chris, sadly. And, we've talked about some numbers. I just finished a podcast just a few minutes ago, as a matter of fact. It's going to drop later on, either tomorrow or Sunday, that talks about the economic impacts and how the government is preparing for that and how you and I are getting nailed. I mean, the obvious ones are the gas prices, right? I filled the gas tank just yesterday, and it was... I'll give you an example. In Collingwood, Blue Mountain, where I am right now, 2 weeks ago, I think I paid about 119 for gas, and it's up to 158, I think, now. Thank you, President Trump, for your idiotic invasion and missile firing into Iran, and this is one of the results of it. Rebecca says PP does indeed embarrass us worldwide, but CBC, CTV, the National Post, and the Toronto Star all trying to make him look like a superstar. It's pathetic. Yeah, I've read that stuff too, Rebecca, and it is awfully frustrating that they speak in half truths and they give this guy more airtime. Whenever there's anything of any consequence happening, like oil prices, uh, they seem to be the go-to people they go to is Poilievre or Andrew Scheer or some other conservative, talking head who wants to jump in there and talk about what's going on. They're not the government, okay? And they may say something that they may be quotable for a soundbite on CBC News later that day, but it's of no consequence to what's going on in the country, okay? He's not the government prime minister. He's not the government. Nor is Andrew Scheer, nor some of the other people that they always want to jump in. Peter MacKay, I talked about this. Peter MacKay was a former member of the Harper government, okay, and he was a minister in that government. He's getting more friggin' airtime on CBC and CTV than he was when he was in government. I don't know why they decide to do this, but that seems to be a mindset that's going on. And I've talked about this on the podcast before. It is me to a reflection of the right-wing swing that the media is taking here in this country, and we need to be cognizant of that. I'm not suggesting that, let's shut them down like what Trump wants to do with anybody who's an enemy of his in the media, but just be aware of where they're coming from and why they're doing what they're doing. Excuse me. Glad to have you with us here on the livecast. I just, with cold weather here, we get dry throats pretty quickly here, and so I indulge you to have a swallow of my vitamin water here. 5 Or says, do you think PP is down there with some backdoor shenanigans with Republican dolts who are planning to sow division and disruption in our fair elections? I don't know about the elections, but I tell you, though, what I think is going to happen here, though, to your point, I wouldn't discount the fact that they're going to try to, in some way, be involved in the Alberta referendum, which is going to apparently come up in October. We already know that the separatists in Alberta, and they are separatists, have already met with some of the Trump people down in Washington. They asked for a big whack of money from them, and so far they've said no. At least that's the story we've been told anyway. But don't think for a second that they're not going to try to put their thumb on the scale there to try to influence that referendum that's going on. And who else knows what's going on in this country? Trump has already indicated his desire to try to make this the 51st state. He wants to take over Canada. That's all there is to it. He'd love our natural resources and our water and everything else, softwood lumber. Don't believe for a second this BS that he says that we don't need anything from Canada. They need a lot from this country. But he doesn't want to deal. He doesn't want to negotiate. He wants to take over and dictate. That's the way this guy operates. And that's why we need to be very, very cognizant of what's going to be happening with these supposed negotiations. And I use that term loosely with our trade deal. Hey, Brian, good to have you with us today. Oil is the main topic. Fertilizer is as big. Food shortage equals famine equals revolution. I talked about that on a podcast that just dropped a couple of hours ago, Brian. And we don't talk much about that, but you're right. Even the Strait of Hormuz, an awful lot of the fertilizer that's used globally passes through the Strait of Hormuz, and it's not getting anywhere these days. Now, you might think, well, that's good for Saskatchewan, right? Because now, well, they can supply more. The price globally is going to go up. And I'm not so much worried about the people that manufacture this stuff. Good for them in Saskatchewan. But the farmers are going to get screwed once again because they're going to have to pay way more for fertilizer. It's the middle of March here now. And these guys are starting to plan for fertilizing and growing crops for the growing season, which is coming up very quickly in North America. Can they afford the fertilizer? Right now, it's going to be a real problem for them. And if it is, that means less food supply, which is going to mean prices that grocery stores are going to skyrocket once again. And it all goes back to Donald Trump and this idiotic attack on Iran. Let's not lose sight of that. Hi, Linda. Good to have you with us. Says, I hope people who can do so donate to the food bank in Toronto that lost that shipment of rice in the tanker. Yeah, that was sad. The food bank in Toronto, of course, the Daily Bread Food Bank, they have had to option for worldwide supplies for some things like rice, simply because it's difficult to get them here in Canada. They try to get local supplies as much as possible. It's a great institution, by the way. But yeah, the rice that was supposed to be heading to Toronto to the food bank got blown up. And they're trying desperately now to find some alternative supplies for that. So if you can at all, yes, it's a good idea if we can to support them in the work that they're doing. Canada File says, can we talk about Peter Manger's disgraceful paid shilling for the Huawei Korean subbid. Yeah, Peter did a podcast with Poilievre, as a matter of fact, at one point, and failed to, as he was talking about where Canada should go to buy their submarines, and seemed to be leaning a little bit towards the South Korean bid for that. And afterwards, a day afterwards, I think he, in the interest of full disclosure, finally admitted that he has done some lobbying and is paid by the company that is making the Japanese submarines. Sorry, that's a that's a foul, Peter. 2 minutes in the penalty box for that. You're supposed to, when you're doing something like we're doing here, in full disclosure, you need to say what bias you have or if you're being paid by somebody or not, just so people understand the level playing field. It doesn't mean don't do it. It just means so you all know this. I get paid by these guys, okay? Or I'm not being paid by these guys, and I'm being totally independent about this. But that can, in some people's minds, skew your perspective on this. So when you're presenting your opinion, either pro or con, for the way the Canadian government should move when it comes to the purchase of submarines, for instance, are you being objective, or are you really shilling for the company that's giving you money? It's something that people in this business, and that I've had to do when I was in broadcasting, and Peter spent years and years in broadcasting too, of course, before he got into the podcast sort of things. You need to be aware of that, and you need to be, in the interest of full disclosure, honest about exactly where you're coming from. Even if you don't think it's influencing your decision, you need to put it out there so people can say that. Because when they don't, and then something like this comes up, like, aha, Peter, didn't you say? It sullies your opinions and your reputation too, and that was a big bad. It says that was a wrong by Peter. He should have disclosed that. Emancipation poet. Yep, you're absolutely right. And I know. I don't know Peter well, but we've talked a number of times over the year. I got a lot of time for Peter and a lot of respect for him too, and he really dropped the ball there. Canada File says Hanwha was filled with the internet with misinformation about the facts of their bid. Hanwha is an interesting company, and they're still in the running. As a matter of fact, I'll give you a quick side story to that, just to tie this up. I want to read Philip's comment, and then I'll talk about that. Hanwha seems good for us, though, because they buy Algoma Steel, new electric arc furnaces, and then buy the beams from them. Yeah, there's a lot of good things about what they're proposing to do here. But in the meeting that the Prime Minister had today with up in Norway with the other leaders, the German leader and the Norway Prime Minister, they asked him about the German sub purchases, and he kind of dodged the question, which means they have not made a decision on that. There was no commitment as, yeah, we're going to buy the German subs. So South Korea is still in play. And I don't know which way they're going to go on this. Although I find it interesting when it comes to the fighter jet purchases. They're talking about the amount of work that's going to have to be done up in the Arctic with those. One of the elements that has been talked about considerably there is the Swedish entry in Canada's decision to make here about the jets. The Gripen, we're told, is a much better jet in cold temperatures, in constant cold temperatures, as the F-35 American jet is. So I'm just laying that out there, so we don't know where they're going to go. And I'm waiting, because I know that you have asked us a number of times, when are they going to make a decision on the jets and on the submarines? I don't know. I thought it was going to come sooner than it has already. Now, I'm figuring, and this is just me based on some of the information I've received from some of the sources I've talked to over the last little while, that it's going to happen sometime in the spring. They're going to have to make a decision on that. And there's going to be, I think, controversy on this no matter what they decide to do. The jet thing, I still think, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago now on the podcast, I still think we're going to end up with a hybrid. I think there's going to be some F-35s. Well, they're already going to be because we ordered them. There'll probably be more F-35s, but I think you're going to see some Gripens in the mix too. The submarines is a different situation. They're going to have to make a commitment one way or another on that. Rebecca says that Trump is the catalyst for all of this catastrophe we see right now in the world and in the foreseeable future, including food shortages, huge inflation that we just started to get under control. Yeah, and you know what? That gets lost, and Rebecca, and I'm glad you brought that up. He's the guy that's to blame for the high prices. You're paying a lot more for gas at the pump right now. That's because of Donald Trump. You're paying a lot more for groceries now. That's because of Donald Trump. And let's not lose fact of that. Even the jobs report that came out today, which is very concerning about the number of jobs that were lost in this economy. Although when you look at some of the net gains and losses, it's maybe not as bad as some of the guys are saying. But I didn't hear any of these so-called experts laying this at the feet of tariffs. Our steel industry, our softwood lumber industry, the aluminum industry, our food processing industry have all been basically crapped on because of these tariffs. And is the solution to say, okay, cave into it and do whatever they want? We're going to be tariffed, and we're getting tariffed by Donald Trump, and that's having an impact on our economy. And nobody seems to want to throw that in there. Certainly, Poilievre doesn't want to bring that into the conversation. Poilievre cannot say a discouraging word about Donald Trump because almost half of the people, we're told, in the conservative caucus and conservative supporters are big fans of Donald Trump. He's killing or trying to kill this economy. He wants to take this country over, and he's trying to do this by doing everything he can to try to basically backstab our economy. And the numbers are showing that it is having a negative impact. I don't want our prime minister to give in. I don't think most Canadians want to see that happen either. Chantel, hey, good to have you with us. As I think Trump met his match, and he's getting his ass kicked really, and they're going to do anything they can to go. There's an interesting piece that I'm going to talk about in a future podcast about what's going to happen with those negotiations between Canada and the U.S. And there's some there are ominous warnings in that too that I want to get into in more detail. Hey, Linda, good that you could be with us today. Says I'm pretty sure that they've made the decision about the Jets, and Carney is holding on until the right time to give us leverage in the Kuzma review. Could be. It could be. The same thing with the precious minerals that we've talked about here too. And that he talked about those during the press conference earlier today about protecting our sovereignty over those minerals and suggesting that, we're going to do this. It's Canadian territory, and we're more than willing to negotiate. The United States needs some of the stuff that's in the ground here in Canada. Make no mistake about that. Don't listen to the bluster from Trump. They need them. And what the question is going to be is here, are they going to be willing to negotiate to get rights to these? And I don't know if the answer is yes or no. Because Trump doesn't negotiate. Trump dictates. He threatens to move in and take whatever he wants. He wanted oil from Venezuela. What did he do? He overthrew the president there and he hijacked tankers and now has access to that oil. I hope to God he's not going to try to use that same kind of process here in Canada, but I don't rule anything out right now. The guy's crazy and just really off center here, and I guess nothing should surprise us at this stage. But we need to protect ourselves and be ready for that. Chantel says, still waiting for the Iran to release the files. Somebody, Chantel, somebody, somewhere, whether it's Iran or somebody else, have the Epstein files. I know they do. Don't tell me with all the crap that's gone on and all the investigations and all the files that are there and the investigation that's been done previously. Somebody's got that stuff. Now, I don't know why. I know the Epstein family have them, and they don't seem to want to release them. They're hardly friends of Donald Trump, but somebody someplace, with all the interference that's gone on, all the hacking that's gone on, whether it's Iran, Russia's certainly not going to release them because they're Donald Trump's their puppet. But somebody is going to release that at some point. And I don't know what they're waiting for. The world wants to know. Certainly the United States needs to know about what's going on. Beechin said, should Ontario Liberals and NDP form a coalition to take on the cons? It seems like both parties are going to keep splitting the vote. That's a good question. I don't know what's happening in provincial politics here in Ontario. We just talked about this earlier in the day. Ford has a huge majority, of course. He won another re-election just a few months ago, late last year. And there's really no opposition right now. The Liberals don't even have a leader provincially here in Ontario. And who knows? I don't even know if anybody wants the job right now, but somebody's going to have to take it. And they're not going to vote for the NDP here. Marge Stiles, I know, is the opposition leader right now, as she was in the last provincial parliament. But Ford's got a free ride right now, and he knows he does. Anybody is beatable, but you've got to have strength, and you've got to have somebody who's going to present an alternative to the guy who's in charge. And right now, neither the Liberals nor the NDP are offering that. Could they unite and offer something? I don't know. Again, it depends on who the leader is and what their personalities are. I'm not so sure that's going to happen anytime soon, though. Chantel says Iran said they would release if they attacked them. You're talking about the Epstein files. Well, this is as good a time as any because you're being attacked. Are you waiting for boots on the ground? I mean, how many more missiles are going to be fired before you decide that we have to do something drastic? Well, they already are doing something drastic in the Strait of Hormuz. Canada Nurse says buying U.S.-made jets comes with too many strings attached. It's also supporting a country that has a corrupt government. The GOP will not get rid of Trump unless they get hurt financially. I'm not sure if they even get rid of Trump if they are hurt financially. They're being hurt financially now. The only people that are benefiting from what's going on now, including in the United States, are his billionaire friends. And you notice that, when this thing started a couple of weeks ago and they started firing missiles into Tehran, gas prices shot up, grocery prices shot up, and Trump basically he said, "Look, it's temporary. Don't worry, and stop whining." He basically said, "Stop whining." However, when the stock market started to get impacted by this, he jumped all over it because that's all he gives a damn about is making money for him and his family and his billionaire friends. He doesn't care what the average person in Roanoke, Virginia, or in Modesto, California is making. He doesn't care. He doesn't care what you pay for gas. Doesn't care about grocery prices going up. He doesn't pay for groceries. Why should he care? But when the stock market's impacted and his portfolio is impacted, he pays attention, which tells you where his priorities are. And the sad part about that whole thing is not enough Americans seem to even care about that he's ripping them off right in front of their eyes, and they don't seem to want to do anything about it. Kellyanne says Trump's moving Marines over there as we speak. Yeah, I know that, and if there's going to be that ground war that they've talked about for quite some time, it's going to be interesting to see just how Iran reacts to that, but how some of the other countries react to this as well. And they talked about that because of G7 commitments and NATO commitments. Turkey is a NATO nation, let's not forget. And they've had to intercept a number of missiles that have been fired in their direction. At some point, if Turkey says, okay, enough is enough, we're calling on all other nations. An attack on one is an attack on us all. They're attacking us. What are you guys going to do about it? How are they going to respond to that? How are they going to respond? Are other nations going to say, okay, we got you back here? We're going to join that, which is going to be a fascinating decision to make because the people firing the missiles right now are Israel and the United States. And Iran may, in fact, as they have, start shooting missiles at some of these other countries. Where does NATO stand on this? And exactly what are they going to do? And who are they going to defend? And to what extent are they going to defend this? I saw somebody comment on one of the episodes recently that Trump will send the detainees in ICE centers to fight the war. I don't think so. Those are his people. I think I saw that post too. I think it was on Substack a couple of days ago. I think that was done tongue-in-cheek. These are the people that he thinks are law enforcement officers. The majority of people that, as we saw in Minnesota and some of these other cities, they're fat, out of shape. They're radicals in every sense of the word. And they're not soldiers in the true sense of soldiers. I mean, they're an insult to people in law enforcement and in the military who train and are out for the best interest of the country or for their community. These guys are an aberration, but they're Trump's people. They're his stormtroopers. They're his brown shirts, just like Hitler had his. Well, Trump's got his team right now. They're not going to head anywhere over there anytime soon. They have Trump's dirty work to do in the United States, and I think that's where they're going to stay. It says, I mean, the people that have been detained instead of enlisting American citizens. He's talking about a draft. That's one of the things you have to understand and concern yourself with. Another draft to bring Americans, whether they like it or not, into it, just like they did in the Vietnam days. I don't think that's going to go over well at all with the American people. And I'd be surprised to see him do that, although nothing should surprise us that Donald Trump does these days. But I would be fascinated to see the reaction to this. Nona says, Iran is the first country in a long time that is taking a stand. How many countries has the U.S. made regime changes for American companies? I mean, interests. Well, the obvious ones are Venezuela, of course, and what happens in Iran. They've tried to do it in Greenland. He wanted to take that country over. He's looking at Cuba next. That's going to be something that I think we're going to have to deal with. That's going to be happening very soon. They want regime change in Cuba. And it's, in so many ways, it's wrong. Cattell says, hey, Barron first. Talk about Barron Trump. Yeah, if you're going to draft people from the Americas, North America, and from the American citizens to be in the armed services, Barron Trump. Now, some people say that he's going to be exempt. Well, don't forget his daddy was. This crap about bone spurs and everything else. Trump's father wrote 2 or 3 different letters and paid doctors, paid them off to write those deferral letters so he wouldn't have to go into the military. I'm sure the same thing will happen, just as it will for Trump's 2 crazy sons, his idiot sons, Don Jr. and Eric, that are still out there, who, by the way, are making millions of dollars from all these war enterprises that his daddy's undertaking because they've invested heavily in munitions companies and drone companies, so they're going to make a ton of money off this. Trump says Barron was too tall at 6'9" to be drafted. No, he's not. NBA basketball players have served in the military. That he's not too tall at all. But Trump is always going to make excuses for that. So is the U.S. making a fortune selling Venezuelan oil now? Well, they're making money. I don't know if it's a fortune or not. But the interesting part about this right now is that with the oil prices skyrocketing the way they are, yeah, there is a possibility they could make an awful lot more money than they have been in the past. But Trump doesn't even seem to understand that dynamic. You saw, I'm sure, the post he put on Truth Social a couple of days ago said when the oil prices go up like this, we all make money because we have more money in oil in the United States than any other country. But it's the wrong kind of oil. It's not the kind of oil that can be refined and made into gasoline for your cars. It's light oil. And so they ship that to other parts of the world. They need the heavy oil, like Alberta makes, but they don't have enough of it. So they're looking for other sources. And yeah, the fact that they basically have a hold on Venezuela oil right now is probably beneficial to them. But I don't know on the long term if it's going to be that beneficial to them. I mean, the price is going up and up and up, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to go down anytime soon. We need to get our heads around that and that reality. And again, I go back to what I said a few minutes ago. Don't forget who started this whole thing and who started these price increases. The U.S. wants full National Security Council, and they're going to go country to country until they can actually have it or stop the way it is. Nobody's going to stop Trump at some point. They just seem all to be caving into this. And that's the thing I think that should scare the hell out of all of us. Until somebody finally stands up to the idiot and says, you're not doing this anymore, get out of that country, and does something about it. It's interesting to see the passive attitude that even some of the other G7 and NATO nations are taking toward this. At what point do they cross a line and say, okay, enough is enough? It doesn't look like they've reached that point yet. Harry, good to have you with us. Says that a draft is exactly what they need here. Will spur interest, or protest rather. They're not doing that often enough. Rumors the 28th, they're going to protest the war. I've heard those stories too, and we have seen some protests in some cities. But not to the extent that I think we need to force the government to back down on some of these things that they're doing. And I don't know how far this is going to go, but it's about time. And I've talked about this on our podcast for months now, that the world is upset. The world has had enough of Donald Trump. The world has had enough of the crap that he's instilled on all of us with things like, well, the missile firing into Iran, Venezuela, and other things that you and I have had to pay a price for because of the economic ramifications. At what point is somebody going to stand up and say that's enough? It's got to come from the American people. All right. I think there should be a regime change in the United States, but I don't want to see it happen with a riot or with a revolution. It's got to happen with the American people themselves have to rise up. Carmen says Trump won't stop, and maybe his successor won't either. Next will be Cuba, Greenland, and Canada. We're still in the sights. I know we are. We're still in his crosshairs, and Greenland certainly is, and so is Cuba. It's at the stage now where Cuba is such dire circumstance because of the embargoes that have been placed on that country right now, that people are starving. There's no fuel. There's no power. People can't turn on the lights. They can't do anything in that country right now. And he wants to just walk in there when they're in such dire straits and simply say, okay, we're in charge now. And who's going to stop them? Who is going to stop them? It's a sad commentary. And that's the way these guys seem to want to work these days. You don't need what he's doing in Iran right now. You don't need to fire missiles. He's thinking right now the strategy is starve them and kill their economies so that they come begging to the United States. I'd like to think that's not going to happen here, but you don't discount anything this guy will do to try to gain power. It's all about this lust for power and this egomaniacal stance that Trump takes on everything. John says the price of oil is going up, is going to help push money towards upgrading Venezuela's oil processing. Yeah, except that we did find out a couple of months ago, John, that the major oil companies themselves don't want to invest in nickel in Venezuela. There's a lot of upgrading that needs to be done to that infrastructure, and they're not interested in it right now. Because I think they still think that this is a short-term, it's long-term impact on you and me. But the oil companies don't want to do this. Let me get more money up here. It says Mark Carney should convince Iran to stop the war by removing the sanctions against Iran and bring Iran back to a normal trading country. Carney has only got one voice in that. I mean, the concern here is what's happening with the rest of the world. And the embargo that they talked about today was on Russian oil, not on Iranian oil. And we have to understand where a lot of the stuff is coming from. And you're right, there's the political ramifications to this. But here's the thing. Even we talked about a few minutes ago, but the fact that a lot of the oil that's produced in the United States is light oil, sweet oil they call it. and it's not what they need for refining to fuel cars and trucks and things like that. They can convert those refineries to do that, but it would cost billions of dollars to do it. And the companies don't want to do that because they figure, you know what, at some point this is all going to end and we can go back to the way business was and refine the stuff and sell it overseas and we all make lots of money. They don't give a damn about the impact it's on consumers, but they don't want to make that kind of an investment right now because they don't want to spend that money unless it's absolutely necessary. And they control Trump, and he'll stop it at some point when they say enough is enough, or we're not making the money we wanted to make. It's all about his billionaire friends and who's influencing his opinions on these. And it's not you and me, and it's not the American public. It's the people on Wall Street that are telling Trump what to do. That's as well as the guy in Moscow, of course, who's telling him what to do. And we have to understand that reality too. As our Prime Minister, as Mark Carney has told us time and time again, we, and not just in Canada, but I think globally, have to understand that we can't just try to make policy and decisions based on the way we wish things would be in the world. We have to do it based on the way things are. And it's a pretty bleak picture right now. Rebecca says, I understand from my brother who used to go to Cuba 5 times a year that many young men have been enticed into the Russian military with huge pay packets. How could this play out? Well, you know what? If you're not getting any food, if you're living in Havana or one of the suburbs there and you can't feed yourself and you don't have any money and you can't turn the lights on, and somebody says, here's a bunch of money, you want to go fight, a lot of guys, young men, may just take them up on that. Although once they get over there, they're going to find out that they're cannon fodder for the war. I mean, the number of casualties in that war is tremendously sad and tragic. The number of Russian casualties is a lot more than they're even admitting to. So you want to go over there and fight for the Russians? You don't necessarily plan on coming back home because that's just the way things are. We've heard stories about Russian soldiers dropping their arms and running out of the battlefield because they've had enough of this crap. Canada File says, when I was attending Ryerson in 86-90, one of my professors was a self-admitted draft dodger who had fled Boston in the late 60s. We can probably expect a lot of that again under Trump. Yeah, there was a lot of people who came up to this country to avoid the draft back in the 60s. A great singer, a folk singer named Jesse Winchester is one that I got to know from interviews that I did when I was in my radio days. But there are quite a few others, too, that came up here and stayed. And a lot of them came back in administrations after the war ended finally and went back to the United States because there was amnesty granted. But, yeah, we've already seen this. There was a story that was on, I think it was on CTV just a couple of days ago, about a large number of nurses from the States who are now moving to Victoria, BC, because they're sick and tired of what's going on in the States. And they've all decided, there's about 7 or 8 of them, which is not a large number, but the fact that they all came from one hospital and basically one shift and said, we're going to Canada. And there's more solidarity here. The job is better. The pay is better. You're not getting crapped on like you are by U.S. government officials. And it's a win-win situation. A lot of university professors, a lot of academics are starting to move up here and coming into Canadian universities. It's starting to happen. It's not a wave right now, but a lot of people are looking at it right now and saying, this isn't going to change anytime soon. I want to go someplace where I can sleep at night and not worry about some of the idiotic things that Trump is doing. And I can see that continuing for the next little while. A. Kucher says, greetings from Cyprus. Hey, good to see you. Proud to be a Canadian with our PM leading and building for the future. Cyprus, interesting point. I'm glad you could be with us. This is one of the things I always love about doing the podcasts, as opposed to the terrestrial radio days that we had for so many years working in broadcasting there, is we're all over the world. And it's great to hear that kind of feedback from people who are tuning in and jumping in with their opinions on this. And Canadians are all over the world, too. And it's great that we can reach out to each other in these faraway places and talk about policies that are going to have an impact on Cyprus, you are there, and us here in Canada still. Linda says, thank Todd Maffin for quite a few of those healthcare workers. Yeah, there are people that are reaching out and understanding what's going on there, and recruitments are happening, which is good to see. And I think a lot of Americans who never would have considered a move to Canada are now saying it seems to be the best option for us. And whether it's in things like healthcare or academia or wherever the case might be, we're a pretty viable alternative. And people are starting to understand that, hey, things are pretty good up there in the frozen north. And maybe that's wherever they should be going. Rika says, if U.S. don't rise and stop this, then end up running to Canada to dodge the draft, it would just be a matter of time until they have to fight on the Canadian side. I don't know if this is going to come to armed conflict. You know, I, I'm not going to say Donald Trump's never going to do that because we just don't know what's going to happen. Because he's still got Greenland on his radar, he's got Cuba on his radar, but he is going to be very, very angry when these negotiations between Canada and the U.S. start on the Kuzma thing in just a couple of months. Because I think Prime Minister Carney and his lead negotiators have made it pretty clear, Ms. Charette and Dominic LeBlanc, that they're not going to bend, that they will negotiate, but if the United States stand is we want it, give it to us, or else, they're going to say, screw you. That's all there is to it. And I hope they do. That's the way we should approach this as a Canadian government. You want to negotiate? We'll be glad to negotiate. But if you simply say, give us what we want, or we're going to raise the tariffs even more and make more punitive measures towards you, I want our government to just say, you know what? No deal. Forget it. We're out of here. And a number of people that have looked at this and analyzed this time and again, David Frum just did a piece on his podcast a couple of days ago saying the same thing. Be willing to walk away. And I think Prime Minister Carney and his team have shown that willingness, that if they don't get what they want, that we don't mind give and take, but if it's just going to be gimme, gimme, gimme with nothing in return, forget it. No deal. And I think we have to be steadfast about that. And I don't see our government bending on that at all. And thank God that they're going to be like that, because I think it's extremely important for us. So, yeah. Well, just got a note from Madeline here, our producer, that Sean jumped in here, and thank you for the tip by Sean. Chantel, I'm sorry, Chantel. And yeah, there is word right now that the Russians are helping Iran, giving them intelligence information about U.S. Strategies and U.S. locations in the Middle East. And apparently Trump doesn't mind that. Uh, Ordinarily, you'd say, wait a second, you're feeding the enemy information? We got to do something about that. There's got to be some retaliation. He said nothing, which only tells, as Chantel has told us, the hold that Putin has over Donald Trump. You've seen the caricatures. I mean, he's Putin's puppy on a leash right now. He will roll over, bend over, do whatever Putin wants him to do, and that begs the question that we've been asking for 15 years now: what kind of a hold does Putin have on him? Well, it's substantial, but as to what kind of evidence, maybe it's the Epstein files, maybe it's a lot more. Who knows? Card Craze says, with the current situation, what happens if, most likely when, the USA goes bankrupt? Yeah, there's got to be an economic result and circumstance of this too, Card. I don't know how deeply involved they're going to be and what kind of solutions they're going to have. But you can only bend so much until things start to finally break. Their economy's in pretty rough shape, and notwithstanding what Trump says about this, their job numbers are awful, and their economic future is looking pretty grim right now. You can't tariff your way to economic prosperity. That's all there is to it. Any economist with a brain will tell you that. Sadly, the economists with brains don't seem to work for the Trump administration, so they're just digging themselves deeper into the hole right now. So I don't know what's going to happen. Chantel says, yes, he says Canada, Greenland, and Mexico are now greater North America. Yeah, I saw that on this map that he had in the Oval Office. And by the way, he still has these meetings in the Oval Office when he's sitting down. Does that office not look garish to you? The crap that he's put into that office right now. This is supposed to be the Oval Office, the most prestigious and maybe most powerful government office in the world. And he's made it look like a friggin' sideshow, which I guess is not unusual for Trump, is it? Because his presidency has been a sideshow. Sadly, though, there are people that are paying a price for that. Yeah, he's still got these grandiose ideas that the United States is going to oversee and rule over all of North America, and including Greenland, Greater Canada, whatever. It's all going to be the United States if he had his way. Harry, good to have you with us. Says we need true build-up in southern Alberta and central Yukon, just in case. I think they're come for the oil to start and test Canada's resolve. Also need to build and stockpile drones. Prime Minister Carney talked about the drone element to this, and I think there is a recognition by the Canadian government that they need to step up when it comes to production of munitions and things of this nature, and drones are going to be a part of that. And a number of people have talked about that, and I think we mentioned this in a podcast a few weeks ago too. We're talking about purchases of fighter jets, which are important, and we wait for that decision, but drones need to be part of that strategy too. And I think Defense Minister McGuinty made that statement a couple of days ago too. So I'd wait for an announcement on that to see just how they're going to approach this. Benjamin says, I know that Carney says we are not entering the war with Iran, but if an attack occurs on U.S. soil, I suspect we'll have to commit to joining the conflict. Well, that's interesting to see this is going to happen. Is the United States going to invoke NATO support and simply say, an attack on one is an attack on us all? Is he going to look for this? He's got such a big ego. I don't know if he's going to do that. He's one of these guys that's going to say, no, we're the United States of America. We can do this all by ourselves. They have more might than any other country, the military might. There's no question about that. There's no argument about that. But the way that Iran is handling this war, and it's not a conflict, it's not an excursion, Trump, is interesting because they know that they can't go head to head with the United States, but they can strategically cause all sorts of grief, like they're doing in the Strait of Hormuz these days. Mike says, hey, good to have you with us. Mike says, should Trump and his cronies lose the midterms, I will greatly look forward to the investigations headed by the House. I don't know how much teeth they're going to have. And the Democrats have got to get their act together too, though, Mike. I mean, these are hardly a viable alternative right now in a lot of districts in the states. I mean, they've got to really move. Don't look at what's going on and think we just need to waltz into this election and we're going to win because they're so pissed off with Trump. That doesn't always happen in politics. You got to earn the respect and the votes of the American public. And I know the Democrats have done such a good job of that. I hope they do between now and November because it will tilt that balance an awful lot. Carney says trusted allies, and only if it makes sense. Well, and he mentioned that again with his press conference earlier today in Norway. Trusted allies, and we will fight threats from wherever. And he mentioned Russia, but wherever I think was a reference definitely to the United States. It's not just Canada that's going to be involved in that, though. What about Great Britain? What about France? What about Germany? What about the other members of those organizations? How would they respond to something like this? Siggy from Canada says the U.S. Congress won't go after Trump for all his illegal actions until they fear the American public more than they fear Trump. I don't know that that's happening, though. I thought that would have happened a long time ago. But there's always the idiots like Lindsey Graham and others like that just don't seem to understand what's happening. But they're in safe seats. There are an awful lot of districts in the states, as there are in this country, where people are going to vote for their party no matter what. They don't care. I mean, look at Kellyanne says, first of all, the U.S. has squandered so many of their weapons and spent millions on this war. They have, but I'm sure they have lots more. But we'll see about that. The concern here, though, about the impact this is having on elections and politics, is that some people just don't care. Don't forget, this is a guy, Donald Trump, who was caught on tape talking about, grabbing women by the whatever and doing this to them, and he got elected anyway. I mean, any other time, any other person, that would have been the death knell for their political ambitions. But he still became president. Since then, even when he was out of office for 4 years, he was convicted on 39 cases of fraud, sexual assault, convicted. And the number of other things, of course, stealing all the private documents and storing them in Mar-a-Lago and in the bathrooms down there, he still gets reelected. So there's a large body of Americans, 90-odd million, I guess, if you want to count the votes in the last election, that don't care. They don't care that he breaks the law. They don't care that he's a sexual predator. They just don't care. And they're going to vote for this guy no matter what. And I know that every one of our sensibilities says, well, it shouldn't be like that. But that's the way it is in many districts in the United States. And I don't know that it's going to change anytime soon, which means that the Democrats have really got to get their act together to try to switch those middle voters. The hardcore Trump people are always going to be Trump people. But there's that middle section that supported Trump in this last election. God knows why, but they did. And they've got to change and move over to the other side. Answer says Pierre is going to meet with his overlords in Texas next week. I know he's got ties to the oil industry, the petroleum industry, certainly through Alberta. And if you do that, then obviously you have ties with the U.S. Industry too. So, and again, he's going to get out there and make friendly speeches about, how he's going to help that industry do this and do that, etc. He's not the prime minister. He can't make promises. No, he can say whatever he wants, but he can't deliver. He's not the government. Answer says, I remember political careers being ruined because of pictures of underwear. Trump is convinced of more than 30 counts of fraud and convicted of this, stealing other people's money. And yet America turned the other way because, well, as I said on the podcast, because they didn't want a woman as president. That was obvious when they turned their backs on Hillary Clinton and on Kamala Harris in the last election. They don't want a woman, and they sure as hell don't want a black woman. I mean, that's the attitude of an awful lot of Americans. And I could see that happening over the last couple of weeks of that election. That they didn't want to vote for Trump. They knew that this guy was an evil crook, but they didn't want a woman, and they didn't want a black person, especially a black woman, as president. And that's what it is. Until they get over that bias, until they get their heads over that and around that, America's still in trouble. Aloysius says he's profiting from the office. He breaks the Hatch Act and broke the Logan Act. Who's going to? And you're right. He absolutely is. He and his crooked family, including Jared Kushner, by the way, are making billions of dollars out of their own policies. That's against the law to be able to do that. The Hatch Act says no. But a law is only as good as it's enforced. And right now, nobody has the spine, the backbone to enforce any of that stuff. You got this weasel like Mike Johnson, who's the head of the Republicans in Congress. He's not going to say anything about Trump. Nothing against Trump. He's got his head so far up, well, that this is the way he's going to go. So Trump knows he's got a free ride until there's a change politically and somebody has the courage to do something about that. And sadly, we haven't seen a whole lot of that right now from the Democratic leadership. They really have to get their act together and show that they're an alternative here. Canada Phil says, does anybody remember the Democratic nominee who was running for president? Now he's had to bow out, simply be ending up on video making an exited yeehaw at a rally. Yeah, that was Howard. Oh, shit, I know his name now. Anyway, he was the governor of Virginia, I believe it was, or one of those states down there. Howard Dean, that's right. Yeah, and he was an interesting guy and had all kinds of support until he kind of went ballistic and after one of the rallies and basically killed his career. Gary Hart was another one who was a Democratic nominee for president years and years ago. And was found, photographed, being on a private boat with a girlfriend. He was married at the time. That killed his political career. That one photograph killed his political career. Howard Dean, because he seemed to be an out-of-control dude for about 5 minutes at a rally, killed his political career, at least his presidential ambitions anyway. Trump gets a free pass. What in God's name is going on? What kind of a standard, if any, did the American people hold their public officials up to? Not very high, apparently, these days. Except, if your name is Clinton, for instance, and we can argue back and forth about the Clintons, et cetera, but the fact is they've investigated time and time again, even when he was President Clinton. The Whitewater investigation was supposed to reveal that these guys paid billions of dollars on illegal real estate deals. The Republicans investigated with a guy named Ken Starr, and he found nothing after investigation for months and months and months. So he simply turned to Bill Clinton's sexual escapades, which was not part of his mandate, and on it goes. Same thing with Hillary Clinton. And Deep Digger says, what about the tan suit controversy for Obama? Yeah, that was one of the great, if not the greatest controversy for Barack Obama. He was never accused of sexual assault, never accused of fraud, but he wore a tan suit one day. And the Fox News people just went ballistic. They were apoplectic. How could a president dress like that? Like he's casual, And I couldn't believe that. By the way, he looked pretty damn good in the suit. Obama looks pretty good in whatever he wears, I guess. But they just went nuts on that. And those same people that did that and tried to make this thing up about Pizzagate, about Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton being involved in some child sex ring, which was never substantiated, they're jumping all over that. And when Hillary appeared before that congressional committee a few weeks ago, they even asked her about that then. It was a totally made-up story that was debunked a long time ago, yet the Republicans brought it up once again. This is the mindset that these guys have. And that's why this political quagmire that's going on in the States right now should depress all of us. Because, Claire just says, Obama looked great in that tan suit. Yeah, he did. But that's what they had to hang their hats on, to try to denigrate this guy. And sadly, there are people, Fox News fans, the MAGA hats, that will buy into this and said, yeah, you're right. Anything these guys say that it's derogatory towards, for instance, in that case, Democrats, they're just going to eat it up. They don't need substantiation. Susan says Bondi should go to jail. Yeah, this is something I'd like to see happen if there's going to be a change of government, not so much in the midterms, but when the next presidential election rolls around, and that's not for another 2.5 years now. Do they prosecute some of these people? Look at people like Pam Bondi, Kash Patel. What a joke that guy is the FBI director. On and on it goes. That's the sort of thing we're looking at. Alucia says John Mitchell history shows Bondi's future. John Mitchell, good point, was the attorney general for Richard Nixon during the Watergate thing, and he was involved in the cover-up. And no, Richard Nixon never went to jail for that, although he was found to be in charge of what happened with Watergate and the cover-up. He resigned, and the next president, Gerald Ford, pardoned him. John Mitchell went to jail. He was the attorney general that was deeply involved. He was in this up to his neck. And he was prosecuted after Nixon left office, and he went to jail, and so did a few other people in that administration. Did the Americans have the backbone to be able to do that to this very crooked administration? Time will tell. John Flynn says the second coming of Jesus rhetoric connected with this war in Iran is what scares me the most in the direction of their rhetoric. Yeah, that's Pete Hegseth, the Bible-thumping hypocrite that was going on about, we're doing this for God, and God has appointed Donald Trump. Donald Trump is God's personal appointee to try to swipe, the Muslim people off the face of the earth, and that's the stuff. And a number of U.S. soldiers, I don't know if you saw this story, have actually complained. They've officially filed complaints through the armed services, saying this is what our commanders are telling us, that we're fighting a holy war here. This is Christians against Muslims, and we have to defeat them, just like the Crusaders apparently did in that enterprise that went on 800 years ago or whatever it was. This is what Hegseth thinks is going on right now. This is what Trump's talking about. And the fact that they're calling themselves Christian is probably the most hypocritical thing of all. If Christians are by definition Christ-like, that's the antithesis of what these guys are. But again, the gullible American public are buying into this, and it's sad that they're that naive or that blinded that they're going to just buy this narrative that's being given to them. Mark says, how accurate is the news that we're seeing on Facebook that there is a high chance of removing Trump from office sometime this month? I don't buy it. There are tools in place, Mark, that can do that. There's part of the Constitution that says, if there's enough feeling that the president has lost his marbles and is no longer able to govern, he can be removed from office. But nobody, again, has the backbone to do that. That's got to be done by the elected officials, the Congress, and they're not going to do that. Not as long as the Republicans have control and you got a weasel like Mike Johnson in charge. Not even going to happen. Not even going to come to a vote. I wonder if Ford aircraft carrier toilet problems are a soft mutiny. Yeah, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, on the live stream? That was one of the aircraft carriers that was being sent to the Middle East during the Iranian conflict as it was building. And they had to send it back to Greece for repairs because just about every toilet backed up and there was, feces all over the floors and everywhere else. And what they found, just to give you the follow-up on that, because they did an investigation as they were doing the cleanup, they found that mop heads and clothing and everything else have been stuffed down the sewers, the sanitation system on the. So yeah, it was an inside job. Apparently, somebody on that boat didn't want them to go there and didn't want them to take part. And they did everything in their power to try to make sure that didn't happen. So yeah, it was an inside job, and there were people within that ship. It's interesting to see how many other people in the military may have that same feeling. I don't know to what extent they're going to go to try to extend their feelings about what their commander in chief is doing these days. There are options, I guess, but who knows? Again, it's up to the Americans to sort this thing out. And I don't know that I share the optimism that some people have that they're going to have the good sense to be able to overturn this and do what needs to be done. Sleeping Giant says the USS Ford also caught fire in the laundry facilities, and yes, the sailors are disgruntled. Yeah, there's an awful lot going on here, and I know that there are some elements that are coming forth right now to try to curtail America's involvement in this, but it's got to come from the elected officials. It's interesting and it's fascinating to see that at the grassroots there are going to be some people that want to push back on that. But true change has to come from the decision makers. And I don't see a whole lot of options right now or a whole lot of indication that they're willing to make that step right now. Brian says, hey, Bill, just wondering, let me do okay, I want to get saucy up here, too. Sorry I hit the button earlier here. The evangelical groups have been working systematically since the 60s to take over the Supreme Court, the school boards, and local politicians in order to destabilize American democracy. Yeah, I know, and Donald Trump has seen that. Donald Trump is not Christ-like. He's not religious, but he saw that there's a movement going on, and that was where the Republican base was going, whether it was the Tea Party back in the day and now the MAGA people that are involved in the party these days. And he gravitated to that. He's playing them for suckers, too, and they don't seem to see that. I want to get Brian up here, too. Says, hey, Bill, just wondering your thoughts on the announcement of the cash infusion to the northern military bases. I live close to Goose Bay base. Obviously, Carney is beefing up our military. Yeah, Brian, I saw that announcement. I watched the press conference earlier today. I totally agree with what the Prime Minister is doing. We do have a commitment, of course, to beef up our services there because we need to defend our territory. That's what it comes down to. And I think, and I just finished a podcast a few minutes ago that's going to drop tomorrow, I think, about talking about this, is I think it sends a message to the Americans, too, that we don't need your back. Yes, you are the most powerful military nation in the world. We get that. But we can defend ourselves when it comes to northern sovereignty. We don't need all your stuff up there. We sure as hell don't want American jets flying over Canada saying that we're protecting the country. We can do that on our own, thank you very much. And I think that sends a message that we can stand on our own 2 feet. And I think we need to show them that we do have strength. We're not simply going to be passive and cave into everything that they say and do. M.T. Penner says, the Iranians are fighting for their life. The Americans really don't know what they're fighting for. It's a different morale and a different mindset. I got to tell you something that's going to happen here. And I'll make a prediction right now. Even if Trump decides to stop this, he says the war is over, but it's not over. We've won, but we haven't won. All this crap, it's so misleading and so confusing. Even if he pulls out tomorrow and says, that's it, we've won, we're packing it in, that's not the end of the conflict. The Iranian regime has told us that they're not going to stop the blockade and the Strait of Hormuz anytime soon, if at all. They're going to continue to block traffic as much as they can, and some will get through, some won't. But if you're running a tanker business, you're going to gamble to say, well, maybe our ship will get through, maybe it'll get blown up. That's going to be something that's going to curtail an awful lot of the activity. And I can guarantee you, based on past experience, that even if the shelling and the missiles going back and forth were to be curtailed or reduced or even eliminated, they're still going to try. Okay. As we've talked about, and this happened in 1979, and I'm old enough to remember that invasion of the Iranian government at that time. Remember, they used to have the Shah of Iran, who ran to the Americas, by the way. He was exiled and ran over to the United States for safety. That's when the Ayatollah took power in 1979, and there was a number of things involved in that. The riots that were going on in Tehran at that time, and Canadian government and consulars and their embassy there were so important in saving American lives and hiding American diplomats and eventually bringing them back to the United States and to Canada under Canadian passports, risking their lives to do that. And never getting any credit for it, by the way, from the American government or the American people. But that's the way things were. So it's been happening ever since. And the bottom line to this whole thing is an awful lot of people in Iran just hate the Americans. They may hate the Ayatollah, they may hate the government that they've got, but they hate America more. And they're not going to side with us and say they're our friends, they're our good guys. And I don't think we need to get into too much detail about how Iranians feel about Israelis. That is not going to end anytime soon. And to state the obvious, what's gone on over the last 3 weeks is only going to exacerbate those differences and the hatred that goes on between those nations and those peoples on both sides. So the back and forth and the terrorist attacks and the bombings and the things that we've seen, the horrendous loss of life, is not going to stop anytime soon. And how much of that are Americans going to put up with? How much of that are Israelis going to put up with? How much of that are Iranians going to put up with? It's not even a time bomb because it's already exploded, but there are multiple explosions still to come, and it's pretty scary to think that that's going on. Brian says, awesome, Bill. Thank you. I agree 100%. I think we're talking about the Canadian commitment to the North. Send us a message. I'd love to see Dutch, French, and German backs training in Goose Bay. I think you will. I think now that and Prime Minister Carney has made this decision that we need to have a larger presence and accept our responsibilities with NATO, you're going to see more of that sharing. And like the exercise that the Prime Minister witnessed in Norway today was a NATO military exercise, and Canadian troops, Norwegian troops, others, Swedish troops. You're going to see that coming back and forth between the two, all of the countries involved in that. I think there's an acknowledgement right now from all of the NATO nations, except for the United States, that they need to show solidarity. And the evidence of that, I think, was, first of all, the announcement that Trump has decided that he wants to ease the embargo and ease some of the restrictions on Russian oil. let them get through, because he's using it under the guise that, well, it's going to help to relieve the prices for everybody in America and everywhere else. That's crap. No, it's not. It's to pacify Vladimir Putin. The United States under Trump was the only NATO nation that supported that removal of those tariffs and those restrictions that have been put in place. Every other NATO nation, including Canada and everybody else, said no, leave them in place. They're there for a reason. We need to send Russia a message. Trump doesn't care about that. Trump doesn't care about NATO, doesn't care about anybody else. So it's even more important that the NATO nations are solid and unison with this. And they talked about that today at the press conference. So to your point, I think we're going to see a lot more NATO presence in some of these Canadian bases up north over the next little while, too. I've only got a couple of minutes left here. I want to sign off on this because it is Friday night, and we got a bunch of other things that we want to do. We've got some other podcasts that we're going to drop over the weekend that are going to talk about some of the issues that you and I have brought up here in the last hour. So I look forward to your feedback on all of those. Blue State Champion says, looks like Canada is getting the Chinese EVs just in the nick of time. Yeah, and there's just something else that Poilievre's against. But, I mean, it's a good deal. We've talked about this, and they are going to be coming up here. I'd love to see, a stronger auto industry here than we have. Trump is their biggest enemy. Poilievre is out in the weeds right now thinking, oh, we can get no tariffs. The guy's just so out of touch. And I know that again, he's not in the government. He's not part of the negotiating team, but he's going down there into the Americas, and he's going to talk to people in Detroit and other places and basically muddy the waters. And we don't need that at this stage. We need to speak with one voice, not with having some rogue opposition member going down there and promising things that nobody can deliver, and basically, kissing their butt to try to get on their side when that's not the Canadian position at all. We got to be very careful about that and ask yourselves, really, is he's down there to help or hurt the situation? You've got Jameson Greer, who is the chief negotiator for the United States. He's Trump's guy now at the negotiating table for these Kuzma things. And he stated, quite frankly, and he's said this a number of times, Canada gets any kind of a deal, it's going to involve more tariffs. That's all there is to it. And that's not their starting point. That's their bottom line. So we need to understand that. And clearly the guys on the opposition benches, including their leader, are either naive about this or they simply think that they can carry on with doing what they're doing to try to score points with their base. That's not the reality that we're facing these days. Susanna says, I now hear that 14 soldiers have died up till now. My sympathy for those people and their family. Yeah, probably a lot more than that, including the ones who died in that plane crash just the other day. That we're not even acknowledged. Hegseth goes on with one of his rants, I think it was today, just this morning. We're going to kill them. We're going to kill all these people. We haven't even started yet. We're going to bomb the crap out of them. Never even acknowledging the fact that 6 American soldiers died in a plane crash just 24 hours before that. Because they don't care about the deaths. They don't care about the casualties. They don't care about the impact it's having on humans. It's just about their hatred and their agenda that they want to move forward on. Siren says, thank you, Mr. Kelly, for all the help as well. Take care. Sorry for getting called to dinner. Well, I think everybody's getting called right now. So we're going to put a wrap on this one for today. Dragonflies2 says, thanks, Bill. Well, thank you for being part of the live stream here. We always enjoy doing this. It's Friday today, certainly, but we'll go back to our regular schedule next Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Please join us for the live stream then. There's going to be a lot happening. I know there is between now and then, and we're going to talk about that during our daily podcasts and bring you up to speed on that. And as always, we look forward to your participation and your feedback, as your thoughts on some of the stuff that we bring up here. So check us out. Your support, by the way, by supporting us on the podcast is extremely helpful to us at this stage. So consider that as an option for yourselves too, would you please? James, I got this call just about every time we do one of these. Can you do more live chats? Yes, we will, because we have so much fun doing these. And we will. The once a week thing we wanted to start just to see what kind of feedback we're going to get. I think we're ready to extend that, and we will, and give you a notice on that in the next couple of days as to what we're going to be doing via these live chats, okay? Chris says thanks, and I say thanks to each and every one of you. Thanks so much for being with us. This is the Bill Kelly Podcast, our special live stream. Back at you with our podcast, and we got a number that we're going to drop over the next little while, and we look forward to your feedback on that. To Blackberry, to Annam, and to so many other folks, thanks for being with us. Until next time, I'm Bill Kelly. Stay in touch and stay informed.